Oh, that's a heavy hit. Right rear, right into the wall, head on like that. Doesn't get any harder, Kevin.
That is one of the hardest hits that you can take in a race car when you get turned in the middle of the straightaway, right front into the wall. And it is so violent. And I'm so happy to see him put that window neck down quick. I know the car was on fire and he was in a hurry, but you could hear it in his voice how bad it hurt. And you're going to see him shoot up right here.
Yeah. You hear him go back to the gas, saving grace.
A little dicey down the back straightaway. Cars get a little bit loose and crazy as they get the end of the back straightaway.
I mean, do they think it's 10 to go?
Trouble. Here we go. Here we go.
Jimmie Johnson got turned, and they pile up behind him.
14:48. I mean, the whole crowd. There's a 10.
Wow.
Lord have mercy.
Now watch Jimmie Johnson outside, second row.
Oh, they got four wide. What happened was the one car, he snuck to the outside of the 48 getting into turn 3, and the 6 tried to go to the inside.
Man, Jeff Gordon nailed this spot on. It's not even 10 laps to go, and they're racing like it is. Jimmie Johnson couldn't really decide on a line which to go in. Trevor Bayne filled the hole and made it 4 wide and ended up clipping Jimmie Johnson's quarter panel, sending Johnson spinning across the racetrack, collecting Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Clint Boyer, and Daytona 500 champion Kevin Harvick. The cool thing about this clip is Kurt Busch actually scraped the wall, and he ended up winning the race, and the raced version car of this is really cool.
Hey, Greg. Here's the big one. Man.
Well, there goes half the field.
Sure does. You can see Joey Logano really aggressive to the rear bumper of the 10. He's going to push him all the way up to the 2. And they just, right before the 10 gets there, there's a little bit of movement. And that little bit of movement, when you make that much contact, turns your car right around. That's exactly what happened to Brad Keselowski and the 10 of Almirola.
And that happens right in front of most of the field.
And that really all started with a big push from Joey Logano. Remember Joey Logano talking on the radio earlier about, you got to tell me when I'm pushing that car and it's going to make contact with the car in front of us. Well, that happened right there with his teammate.
In the closing laps of the 2020 Daytona 500, Brad Keselowski will once again get clipped down the backstretch and get sent spinning around, causing a massive crash. I feel bad for Brad Keselowski because it seems like every year he gets turned on the backstretch with just a handful of laps to go, causing a massive crash and not being able to finish the race, even with the strong car. This ultimately would wipe out so many competitors and cars in this race that it would take forever to clean up, and there would be very few cars left to even finish the race. This crash took out over 15 cars.
Here comes Kyle Busch with a push from Boyer on the inside.
Oh, no, Benedetto! And everybody!
Good.
Oh, no.
Are you kidding me? This is big.
Wow.
But it...
Boy, it just reminds me of the Clash. Same type of carnage that we saw where these cars were going everywhere. A lot of damage as they all got to turn 3.
Outside lane, DiBenedetto and Paul Menard.
Yeah, Paul Menard giving a pretty nice push down the back straightaway to DiBenedetto. Gets to his right rear. Oh, yeah, that just starts to turn him a little bit.
Got him in the right rear.
And then he collects Menard.
Yeah.
Logano just misses it, but the whole outside lane and half the inside pile up.
And this is exactly what we were just talking about. At this stage in the race, you can start to taste victory in the Daytona 500. You want to see that checkered flag, and you'll do anything to get it, and you know you've got to be more aggressive with those bump drafts.
It looks exactly like the Clash. I mean, all those cars, third turn, all those cars wadded up, sliding up the track with sparks flying. It looked so much like the Clash.
In the closing laps of the 2019 Daytona 500, Matt DiBenedetto, being pushed by Paul Menard on the outside lane, had a strong surge of momentum on the top. It was ultimately until Menard would unhook with DiBenedetto and send him spinning across the racetrack. There were so many cars who just piled into this accident because they had nowhere to go and they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. This is what happens at superspeedway racing. It's the rubber band effect. You come back together and the entire field will come flying apart if there's one car that spins right in front of you. So many cars were taken out in this accident.
Oh, he can't get that pushed.
Oh, into the wall he goes. And they'll collect more cars behind. The 14 stays on the ground.
Brake, hold the brake, hold the brake.
You can see it happening as he was coming around. Bubba Wallace with contact right there. Watching those guys go around turn 3 and 4. The 14's driving up the racetrack. He is sideways. He's loose. Right in the left rear quarter panel goes the 48. The 48 wants to push him, but he needs to push him in the right side. But the 14's driving up the track loose, and that offsets him the wrong way.
When leading the race coming off of turn 4 at Daytona, Chase Briscoe was touched by Alex Bowman and he overcorrected, sending himself spinning in the outside wall. This was one of the weirdest crashes of the NASCAR Next Gen that I've seen at Daytona, but what ensued behind it was a wild wreck, taking out playoff hopefuls Bubba Wallace and other competitors. Austin Dillon, who you see sliding sideways in pit road, he actually ended up winning this race after an even bigger crash happened just a few laps later.
Harvick slides up in front of traffic.
Cars upside down, cars everywhere.
And turn 4 is Calamity Corner once again. The field is frozen. Jeff Gordon came across with Stewart and Johnson side by side, but there are half a dozen cars littered between turn 3 and the start-finish line.
He's all right.
Last year's third-place finisher, Scott Wimmer, the 29 of Kevin Harvick, the 42 of Jamie McMurray.
One of these cars was just standing up on its nose, swimming, spinning around like a water spout.
Greg Biffle. Jeff Burton had lost an engine prior to this. He coasts onto pit road between turns 3 and 4.
Because something happened to Greg Biffle, the 16 car that triggered all this.
I believe, watch it, see if it's Harvick's car. Oh, no, it's the 22 car.
Scott Wimmer.
Look at him just spinning around. He got up on his nose and come back down on his wheels.
That Busch, it's Kurt Busch. Whew, he got to run. Got to run. 97 car. Kurt Busch really got to run. Push the 21 car right on by.
That 97 has shown to be fast, very fast.
And what's at stake for him here? He's
trouble.
Contact on the backstretch. It's Mike Waltrip and now Brian Vickers. Robbie Gordon, 31. The top. Oh, Waltrip's over. 1, 2, 3 times for Michael Waltrip. Well, there's the big one right there. Took a lot. There's a lot of good cars right there. Is that Sterling Marlin in there? 40 cars in it. That's Michael Waltrip's car upside down.
Terry Smith.
See movement there at the left side of the car. It's roof. And when you're in a situation like that, you are just a passenger, especially when these cars start turning each other. Here you see, looks like Johnny Sauter slid up in the 30 car into Brian Vickers in the 25. A chain reaction.
Yes, that's Michael Tuckins. Yeah.
And Biffle, the pole sitter, looks like he barely got through there.
So you see the tire come off of Michael's car. Then it got into that grass softened by the rain, and it just dug in, just like we saw Ryan Newman's last year, and sent the car over.
There's Harvick, Kevin LePage, Johnny Benson,
Terry Labonte. You saw McMurray and Vickers.
Okay, here we go. This might be our best shot.
Watch the car at the bottom there. The blue and yellow car. Slides up right there. Just ever so little contact, which doesn't look like a lot when you're running 185, 190 miles per hour. It's a lot.
There's the 15. The mountain right now, he's going to dig in. There goes one of the tires that Alan talked about. Violent.
Very violent.
No matter the decade, if it's the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, or 2020s, Daytona is one of the most fierce and dangerous tracks that's ever been built. And over the years, we've seen some dramatic and traumatic crashes at Daytona. And Michael Waltrip proved that even in the grass, it's not safe. Michael Waltrip in 2004 got spun into the grass and his car hooked in the grass, making a rut and sending his car flipping violently down the back straightaway. Thankfully, Michael Waltrip was okay, but it took a long time for them to clean up this massive accident because he was trapped in his race car upside down. This was one of the early crashes of the 2004 season, and it really set the tone of a wild year that would ensue.
Oh, Berry's gone, and he goes up and over. Huge hit for Josh Berry.
Eric Jones is involved. There's Austin Cindric.
Get some kind of big move here off turn 4 like Kevin did. Oh, and there
Johnson to the wall
They
with
wrecked.
the one of McMurray. 3, 4 cars around. One on its roof. One car hard into the wall.
That was a...
And it ends in flames and sparks.
Our front row sitter up here, he's got a torn up race car.
Mark
78
Trix,
car.
Jimmie Johnson, he looks okay. Front end of his car on fire.
Menard had a fast car all day long, and here comes McMurray, and he just gets a little bit of piece of that 48. A lot like happened in the Unlimited. Looked like Jimmy's car just got loose and spun.
Look at Clint Boyer in that 15 car get up in the air.
Thing went all, it did a 360. Unbelievable.
Did a barrel roll and came right back down on its wheels.
And he'll cross the start-finish line because it goes all the way across the infield.
You can see the outside 48 Alex Bowman doing a little side drafting to the right side of Eric Almirola.
And I see a gap in between Eric and the 20 car.
And look at the push coming from Kyle Busch to his teammate Christopher Bell. Now that's going to get him to the rear bumper.
Big shot.
Oh,
yep.
He just got over on that right side.
I could tell you another part of that equation, Jeff. These cars, they have skew in the rear ends. That's obviously for speed and make the cars go fast, make them pull up to other cars. It's also, in my experience, makes them squirrely. When that car hits him, it pushes that car into the steer of the rear end, and it can turn you in a heartbeat.
We're so reminiscent when Eric Almirola lost the lead in the closing yards of this race in 2018.
He was along for the ride. As soon as that contact hit, it just turned his car right. He took the words right out of my mouth. Unbelievable. Crushing blow to so many teams, so many efforts that it goes into having fast cars and being at this Daytona 500. That was a lot of heavy hitters in this one.
Teammate Matt Kenseth and Carl Edwards, 3 Fords. Trouble hard already. The wall. Slams to the outside. It's 5-time champion Jimmie Johnson. He collects Danica Patrick and the 34 of David Reagan.
Trevor Bayne, the 21 car, winner from last year. You see him involved?
Kurt Busch is involved.
I'm a little worried about Jimmy. He took a hard lick right in the door, and there's the HenryCar.com Chevrolet of Kurt Busch. He's got damage.
1 lap and 600 feet, and it's calamity.
Oh my gosh. Ooh, just got a little tap in the back end.
I believe that might have been Elliott Sadler in 33.
Elliott Sadler gave him just a little tap. Right here's what I was talking about. Watch Danica. Right there, she gets some damage, but then watch her go down. Jimmy's car's total, but watch her right here, right between those 2 cars.
First caution of the night, lap 2.
After waiting around for 36 hours, it was time to get the 2012 Daytona 500 underway. But it didn't take long for calamity to ensue, as Elliott Sadler would give a bad bump to Jimmie Johnson, sending him hard into the outside wall and collecting Daytona 500 hopeful Danica Patrick. It was her very first full-time race at Daytona, and she was excited, but ultimately, her day was over only on lap 2. This was a violent crash to start out the night.
Sanchez will try to work both. Oh, trouble. And there's a crash. Caution is out. The race is over. Trucks up in the air. Nick Sanchez leading when the caution flag came out.
Was that?
Good job, boys.
He is going to bring it back around.
Here. Raja gets into Jack Wood, turns him around. Watch the 17. Just contact from Daniel Dye, turns him over.
Bailey Curry in the middle of that mess. Matt Crafton sliding along. He keeps his truck pointed in the right direction. Look at Matt storm out of there.
Let's ride with Daniel Dye.
Our Fox In Race reporter
and cameraman.
impact. Daniel had no idea there was going to be a truck right in front of him when he went down that straightaway. That is scary looking.
It's just amazing. But like you said, that's about as soft as you can turn one over.
That's exactly right. And it didn't just keep tumbling either, like we've seen happen so many times. I don't know if Raja just lost the front end of his number 71 Chevy or what went down there, but he definitely went up the track and made contact.
Coming to the completion of the Truck Series race in 2024 saw Taylor Gray do a barrel roll over the entire pack while battling for the win at Daytona. Now this is something wild to see. I remember watching this and my jaw was dropped on the floor. To see a truck barrel rolling again down the back straightaway, just as Matt Crafton did years prior, it was honestly insane that it happened again. Thankfully Taylor Gray was okay, but this was a wild thing to witness. The 2020 Daytona Clash saw one of the most stupidest restarts I've ever seen. So many cars spun their tires, it was honestly hilarious to see how many drivers spun out, and some of them even ended their day they couldn't even finish because of the damage they got from this accident. I've never seen such skillful drivers mess up on a restart this bad.
Now Logano to the outside. They can't get around.
Whoa! Keselowski gets turned by William Byron. Blaney gets caught up. Gilliland, Truex, Hamlin, and more.
All those Fords were struggling to get around Chastain. Who could get around and get that clean air track position first? That's what happened.
Just like I talked about a moment ago, Brad Keselowski spinning down the backstretch with a couple of laps to go at Daytona seems to always happen. Keselowski was in a clear shot of victory and a chance to win the Great American Race. Ultimately, until Alex Bowman hit his teammate William Byron down the backstretch and sent him into Brad Keselowski, collecting Joey Logano and many other cars. I think it's really funny how nowadays in super speedway racing, if you're the one who starts the wreck, you usually are the one who avoids the, and honestly sometimes you win the race. And this is exactly what happened to William Byron when he clipped Brad Keselowski and sent him spinning around. I understand Byron won the race and technically he didn't necessarily start the wreck because his teammate Alex Bowman did, but still regardless, Byron is the one who made contact and was actually still the winner of the race just a couple laps later. No matter the type of driver you are, you know looking at this is extremely wrong. Dale Earnhardt Jr. in retaliation decided to wreck Brian Vickers after being upset with him. What would cause behind him would be a massive big one for the Great American Race in 2009. It would take out the strongest driver of the day, Kyle Busch, who looked to finally win the Daytona 500. Ultimately, Dale Jr. in this situation was definitely in the wrong. Brian Vickers would get spun up the track and collect multiple vehicles and cause the biggest crash of the 2009 Speed Weeks at Daytona.
Not at all. Ryan Newman off turn 4 for the final time. Blaney to the outside, to the inside. Here comes Hamlin up the outside. Wow. Crash into the wall, into the air. Goes Newman.
Upside down.
In a shower of sparks on his roof, Ryan Newman comes across the line, 4th, and comes to rest. Scoring unofficial.
Coming to the finish of the 2020 Daytona 500, we saw one of the most horrific crashes we've seen at Daytona in many years. Ryan Newman looked to finally be able to win a second Daytona 500 until a bad block on Ryan Blaney would align his rear bumper and Blaney's front bumper wrong. Newman would then be sent into the outside wall, going so fast his car would be flipped upside down, and then Corey LaJoie, with nowhere to go, would come plowing in and hit driver's side first. This is one of the most horrific crashes in the final lap at Daytona that has probably ever happened since Dale Sr. in 2001. Thankfully, after the scariness of waiting, and forever it felt like, Ryan Newman was okay and was able to walk out of the hospital just a couple of days later.
Okay, now these guys, their job, if you're Austin Dillon, one of those
Watch
guys.
this run Kevin Harvick has on the bottom.
Now the five can go to the outside. They're all trying to build that run that Keselowski did.
Here goes the 3 car.
Will Dillon have help? No, they come down to block. Logano goes back up. Keselowski with him. McDowell in tow. Dillon on the bottom.
The run's on top. Oh! Teammates.
Around they go in a hard crash. Kyle Busch.
Larson.
Caution is out.
Bubba Wallace is in this. Austin Cindric. Hard hit by Kyle Busch.
McDowell.
McDowell is first to the line, but will have to go back to the moment of caution, which ends the race. Brad Keselowski is climbing out. He's okay. Joey Logano we see taking off the gloves and the steering wheel.
I think McDowell's the winner of this race, guys.
He was first across the line. NASCAR will review and have to determine the finish at the moment of caution. And we'll wait for official word.
Huge win if that's the case.
But Bob Jenkins' Front Row Motorsports crew is celebrating on pit road.
Oh, wouldn't that be incredible? You're going to see some emotion out of this guy if this comes back official.
A lot of tore up race cars.
All the Chevys torn up. You saw Priest with damage, Chase Elliott with damage.
This was a really hard hit. Kyle Busch, when he came in.
Yes. Michael McDowell from Glendale, Arizona, for Bob Jenkins' Front Row Motorsports, has won the Daytona 500.
How about that?
Man.
That's a huge win for Michael McDowell and that team. Doesn't get any bigger than this.
And a huge crash for everybody else.
I will again say I feel bad for Brad Keselowski. This is his third time in this video, coming so close to being able to take the lead or the win in the Great American Race and getting crashed out. He had position on teammate Joey Logano up until he was being pushed by Michael McDowell, who sent him into Logano and causing a massive crash that would create a big fireball in turn 30, collecting Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, and many others. McDowell was able to take home the victory this very night, and it was on Valentine's Day in the Loves Ford. But there was no love in the Penske camp, as Brad Keselowski was furious with Joey Logano after this race. Ryan Newman and Daytona just don't mix. Ryan Newman does have one Daytona 500, but besides that, he's been caught up in many accidents. And in 2003, he had one of the most violent barrel rolls down the front stretch, having the entire rear axle come apart from his race car as he was flipping. Grass was flying everywhere and parts and pieces were flying everywhere, and this was definitely the highlight of the 2003 Daytona 500.
Oh, here we go. Trouble. That's Casey Kane. It goes sideways. Joey Logano nowhere to go.
Half the field is
grass. The big one at Daytona has happened at lap 97.
That is the huge one at Daytona.
Justin Allgaier.
Oh, the 18 gets on its roof.
Kyle Busch rolls upside down.
Wow. Got into the 5 a little bit too hard and just turned him. And man, what talk about getting piled up.
Watch the 3 car when we get another replay of Austin Dillon come shooting up through the middle and trying to avoid the accident.
26.
Jimmie comes up, but then McMurray actually comes down and gets onto the left front. It's on from there. I mean, we talked about it earlier. As soon as somebody makes a mistake and you're in this big pack of cars, you're going to take a lot of people with you. It's just how it happens. You can. Some of these cars riding around the back actually got in the wreck as well. So one mistake by a driver, a mistake by...
Here comes Harvick, the 29 with Matt Kenseth.
Oh, Mark got loose. Mark got loose.
Harvick's getting a run off turn 4. It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line.
Dog crash. Here they come. Checker flag. Kevin Harvick wins the Daytona 500.
We got one car on his roof coming across the start-finish line.
Still wrecking. They're wrecking everywhere. Boyer's on fire. Jeff Gordon's wrecked.
And they are still wrecking.
Montoya, Stremme, Kenseth, Lane. Clint Boyer gets slid sideways. Whammo.
And he'll cross the start-finish line unofficially upside down in the 18th position.
On fire. I mean, that's Joey Chitwood couldn't do that.
The 2007 Daytona 500 is remembered by many fans that say it is the best Daytona 500 ever. And to those fans, I think they have a valid point. The racing was great, the crashes were big, the storylines were insane, and the finish was so wild. 2 cars side by side going for the win, and somebody barrel rolling on their roof, crossing the start-finish line upside down and on fire. Now, if that isn't peak NASCAR, I don't know what is. Coming to the line, Kevin Harvick and Mark Martin were banging doors side by side, but behind them, Kyle Busch got loose on the apron and caused a massive crash that would collect basically the rest of the field. He would end up collecting Matt Kenseth and many other cars that would send Clint Bowyer flipping on his roof upside down and on fire in the Jack Daniels car. That is the most historic thing that has ever happened at Daytona. Yes, I'm kidding, but it is hilarious.